Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM live stream. I want to thank you all for being here. 77 people before the show even gets going. That is impressive. I am glad to see that you guys like the show. So that makes me very, 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 very happy. Okay, we got a lot of stuff going on the screen here. Let me try and clean this up a little bit. Some of it is leftovers from stuff. Let's grab that, and I'm going to put this over here. And just give me a second, everybody. Sorry, I don't know why I do sometimes check these things before launching them, but these are important things to know. These are, in my opinion, important things to know. Let me kill the music as well, so I'm not screaming and shouting over that. So you stop there. Great. I hope you can all hear me. And yes, please make sure to like that stream. Or if you have those Twitch Prime or Amazon Prime Twitch subscriptions, send them my way if you're not going to be using them. I do appreciate that. Yes, we're underwater. And why are we underwater? Well, in case you missed it last week, the announcement, I will be officially running the Dungeons and Dragons Ghosts of Saltmarsh stream, which will be on twitch.tv/DND from the 25th of May. I'm going to put that up there. There it is. There it is up there. Ghosts of Saltmarsh, 25th of May. Call of the Kraken. There we go. Look at that. We've already got people trying to take over the role of being our supervillain. Thank you for that donation. Do truly appreciate bits, bobs. And there's the subscribe from Inhuman Militia. Thank you for that. That's put you, I believe, as our monster to beat for today. Now, there is so much stuff going on. It's crazy. It's insane. It's wonderful. If you are familiar with the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, when we start talking Ghosts of Saltmarsh, this is a series of adventures that have been put together, collated since the 1980s. That's how far back it stretches. It's all been combined together into one book, Ghosts of Saltmarsh, as well as some additional stuff. Now, I'm going to be running that campaign, and thanks to the generosity of Dungeons and Dragons, I will also be doing the entire campaign creation process for that 12-part episode. That will be on the YouTube channel, How to Be a Great GM, and that will be launching just before the show on the 25th. So, yeah, that's definitely something to look out for. Now, today we did say that we were going to be doing mega question and answer sessions, so there are no YouTube reviews. There is one shout out that I want to give to a friend of mine. That's the Taking 20 channel, Cody from Taking 20. He released his video a couple of days ago called Dungeons and Dragons Players Are the Worst, and it's a lot of fun. It's technically something very difficult for him to achieve, and he put a lot of effort into it, and I think it looks really, really cool. So have a look at that in your free time when you want to have a bit of a laugh, a bit tongue-in-cheek type of humor, but yeah, from a technical perspective, quite tricky. Now, yes, Ghosts of Saltmarsh is, I'm not going to go into too much spoilers in terms of what's in the book, but it is obviously set around the little village of Saltmarsh, and there was actually a question that was being posed on the Discord server that we have. If you haven't joined our Discord server, please go and join that, and 50 experience points to anybody who links through our Discord server for those in the chats to follow. I am standing by to release that link on YouTube. Now, Yeah, it was in Discord. They were saying, well, what is a salt marsh? What is a salt marsh? And I thought, well, that's an interesting question, actually. I'm not entirely sure what a salt marsh is. And in Discord, there were some answers. It's basically an area of beach that gets flooded by seawater continuously, so it's got a very high salinity, almost like a mangrove swamp, bit more salty than anything else. So it's a mangrove swamp with attitude, really. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we got there. The Board Lich got the link to Discord quite quickly into Twitch. So there you go, Board Lich, 50 experience points to you. I'm going to see, did we get it into, I don't think we got it into YouTube. So I'm going to drop it into YouTube very quickly as well. If you haven't joined our Discord, go and have a look. There's 3,500, almost 4,000 people now in there chatting, talking games. It's so much fun. Lots of cool people there. Now, Ghosts of Salt Marsh, no, so Greyfall, you did not miss anything much. Ghosts of Salt Marsh is an official Dungeons & Dragons publication. They are releasing it May 21st. You can get it through Amazon, and yes, we have an affiliate link on our website if you want to support us. You can buy it through Amazon. You can get it on the D&D store. Obviously, you can get it from almost anywhere. So the book contains additional rules about ship combat and travel. I can't go into too much because obviously I'm under contract from Wizards of the Coast to keep everything under wraps. However, it is a nautical setting. There's lots of ship stuff and there's lots of rules and things that come into play or are already in play. If you are a Dungeons and Dragons fan, there are rules for underwater combat, there are rules for drowning and the like already in the various books, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide and the like. So yes, there's all that kind of cool and fun stuff. And I'm also happy to say that I'm busy working on a supplement that will go out with this, which I think just adds to what is already in this very impressive book. It's 256 pages, I think, which is pretty cool. So yeah, and yes, I know the Thorcana has got some rules for ships and things, so I think that this book is definitely something for anybody who wants to look at a nautical campaign within the structure of an official Dungeons and Dragons kind of rule set without sort of going anywhere else necessarily. So yeah, that's something to definitely look out for. And so that's why we're promoting it in the back here. We're going to be doing all sorts of wonderful, cool things. The Twitch channel's name is twitch.tv/DND. DND. So have a look out for that. They run all of their games and things on that. It's a great channel to watch all of their official stuff coming out. And so yes, I'll be leading a cast of international gamers as we go through Ghosts of Saltmarsh. That launches 25th of May. Now, before we get into those bumper questions, so hang on to your seats, we're going to get there. We are going to get there. Firstly, if you have just joined us, no spoilers for Endgame, Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones, none of that, please. Endgame, I watched it last night here in Tokyo. It did not disappoint me. So there we go. Yeah, it's quite fun. So it's definitely something to look out for there. DungeonFog informed me before you did. It was quite a surprise. DungeonFog, yeah, well, they're our partners in crime. I mean, we're all friends, and so they got their messaging obviously got to you before my messaging did. We did send out some. So anyway. It's all good, and Baker worked for the British Geological Society, specialising in mangroves. Lovely. Very nice to know about mangroves. I'm from a city that has a mangrove, or had, but still does, has a very popular mangrove swamp, and spent many a fond hour walking the boardwalks through that mangrove swamp. Quite strange places, and very difficult places to have combat in, as a matter of fact. Lots of sort of roots sticking up out of the ground and doing weird and wonderful things. Now, okay, so Gen Con 2019. If you haven't noticed, I'm looking at my notes here. If you have not been aware of Gen Con, if you are going to Gen Con, if it's your first Gen Con that you're going to, I'm going to be there. The Web Goblin is going to be there. World Anvil is going to be there. There's just a whole bunch of really cool people going to be there. Taking 20 is going to be there. Nerdarchy is going to be there. XP to level 3 is going to be there. Unmade Gaming is going to be there. So I know a lot of you are fans across the spectrum of those channels. Save or Dice is going to be there. So there's a lot to look forward to if you are going to Gen Con. The catalogue comes out of events next week. I know I will be getting that catalogue and trying to see what I can get into, even though I'm now involved in quite a lot of different things that are happening there. I've got 2 seminars that I'm running, so if you want to look at those, head on over to our website, www.greatgamemaster.com, and there is an events section there that says, right, there we go. Go and have a look. Those are our seminar and workshop numbers. I'm running 2 of those. Dead Aussie Gamer is running a seminar on just all sorts of weird and wonderful and cool stuff with regards to becoming a professional game master. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff. Stranger, you say it's only an 8-hour drive. Interestingly enough, one of my fans, he and I are going to be doing a 9-hour road trip. And one of the things that he asked me quite literally yesterday was, hey, have you ever done a role-playing game on a road trip? And the answer to that is yes, I have. It was in a bus, and there were 5 of us. This was a very long time ago. And we actually used a system called Fighting Fantasy, which came out a long time ago. Fighting Fantasy, it's just a D6 kind of thing, because of course in those days we didn't, oh my god, in those days we didn't even have cellular cell phones. That's terrifying. It was payphones and emergency telephone boxes on the side of the highway. Nonetheless, we used to play on those long trips. So he and I will be driving down from St. Paul, the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We will be driving down to Indianapolis for Gen Con the day before. So I think he said it's a 9-hour trip, which if anybody's ever been on a road trip with me will be more like 12 or 13 hours as I go, can we stop there because that looks like a really interesting place to stop? I have no idea what it is, but I want to stop there and look at that stuff because that stuff is cool. So anyway, there we are. Lots of fun things. So maybe we'll do a role-playing road trip type of thing. Now that we have apps with dice upon them that we can roll so they don't roll under the seat or, cause the driver to accidentally let go of the wheel when they roll a natural 20 and they put their hands up and everyone puts their hands up and then everyone's screaming and, those kinds of things. So anyway, there we are. All right, so I see Dead Aussie Gamers dropped in there. Yes, becoming a paid game master is his seminar. So that is something definitely to look at, which is pretty cool. Right, so now let's get on to questions. Questions. So this is your space. This is your space. Now, when you're going to ask a question, write question in caps, in bold, in sparklies, and dump that in front of your question. So please do that, otherwise I won't see it. If I don't answer your question, do not lose heart. Copy and paste your question again. All right, so that's definitely something to look at. Right, so there's the very first one. Raven9, how you doing? I have this weird idea I did for a game I'm in, since it's a prologue for another story, and I'm going to have my Warforged turn his living meta body into a sword for a character who's a central part of the non-prologue. Next companion I made, so it was lore about ancient Warforged arts that are now long lost, and he used, but we're not 100% sure on what to do with it beyond lore, since it's powerful beyond normal swords. You can get, has runes, making a usable character. I'm not entirely sure where you're heading with that. I think that the question here is what to do with weapons that are really powerful and have this really cool lore behind it. There was a question actually on what to do with players who have magical items that are too strong, and one of them is that they gain sentience. And so effectively what they become is they become an NPC. When you look at it that way, you then go, okay, so if the character is wielding this Warforged sword, which is quite literally carved or made out of a Warforge, Is the Warforged happy about that? Is it a self-sacrifice? Is it something that they didn't want to do necessarily? If that's the case, then either the sword is going to want to be freed and restored back to its original Warforged space, or the sword becomes an NPC. So what that means is when you're then balancing out your encounters and things, you count the sword as an NPC, not as a great stat block for a player. So the player, yes, their character will have the sword that they are wielding and that they are using as their weapon of choice, but as a stat block, you have accommodated for that by adding in as if it was another character of the same level. That's something that you can do in terms of doing that. Now, I'm literally reading these questions. As you see, they're flying up behind me. So, Benjamin Deh says, I have a character who lost all her feelings and now... Wait. I have a character who lost all her feelings and now he is finding it really difficult to roleplay his character. Everyone has always questioned the choices he makes that look like emotional. I'm not entirely sure what your question is. He's even considering quitting the game. Any suggestions? Wait a minute. What's this? Let's try and unpack this now. I considered him making a new character too, or even undoing part of what happened to him so he only loses love or something. It sounds like you have a conflict of character story versus party. And if you've watched any of my videos recently, especially the one I'm thinking of in terms of injury and self-induced injuries, well, not self-induced, self-created injuries in terms of you've added this injury to the character, in terms of that, this sounds like it's getting in the way of role-playing. It also sounds perhaps like your players are looking for nitpicky reasons to challenge this entire situation. I would try and unpack that, and I would try and get rid of that. If they've lost their emotions, sure, they don't want their emotions back. They're working on pure logic, so they're running almost like a Vulcan or a Tranquil from Dragon Age. That's possibly an interesting character to play if the player is ready to rise to the occasion to make it interesting. If they're just playing it as a bland character, that could become very frustrating for the other players. So if they're wanting to leave the group, that's very bad. I would look to asking the group first, individually, do they not like the player or do they not like the character? Understand where that tension comes from and then move from there. That would be my suggestion if that's the question that you were asking. Okay, Gary Grant says, I'm running my first urban campaign in Waterdeep. The vast history and background seems daunting and, well, vast. Any suggestions on handling an urban campaign? Well, okay, yes, the lore is vast and incredibly complicated, and if you have players who are lore fanatics, if they love Waterdeep and they've played all the games in Waterdeep and they kind of know the names of all the NPCs and the like, you have some options. My very first option that I would suggest you do is either set the game 1,000 years in the past or set it, say, 300 years in the future. Have it having been taken over by some strange force and then restored back so that you can wipe the slate on all of the NPCs, all of the names of buildings and things in Waterdeep, simply that you don't have to worry about all that lore. That's a really cheap trick to doing that. What you could also do is, because there is a lot of lore, there really is a lot of lore, what you could also do is, once you've sort of created this historical change or whatever it might be, you can then start to bring back elements. They say, oh, is the Tavern of the Flying Griffin? See, I've never been to Waterdeep. Is the tavern there? You can then decide, yes, why don't you describe to me what it looks like now? Throw it out to the players. If you're uncertain, throw it to the players. How do you feel about the Brotherhood of the Dangled Feather? Let them answer it. That's an old trick that teachers used to, or lecturers use when they don't really know the answer. They let the students try and figure it out, and then they work it out before the students get there, hopefully. Anyway, so that's something to definitely look at. As to the second part of the question, which is the urban campaign, urban campaigns can be a heck of a lot of fun if the players know that that is what they are getting. So if you are positioning them in an urban campaign, you're looking at a lot of politics, you're looking at a lot of thief stuff, you're looking at a lot of legal law stuff. I actually have a video which I haven't made yet. I'm pondering if it's something that people will want to watch, which is, and it's about working with the law within a role-playing environment for players. So I've done one on GMs running the law and handling how to handle PCs that break the law repeatedly and should just get arrested and executed, really, how to do that. So I have done that, but from a player perspective, how to then work with the law. I'm not sure if there's enough meat there yet, but it is definitely something to look at. Urban campaigns, like I said, you're looking at the underground, so the black market, what thieves are going on, what assassinations are going on. You're looking at the law side of stuff, and then you're looking at the political side of stuff, the merchants, the princes, the lords who live in that space. Those are all kind of options that you can come up with. You're looking at invasions against the city. You're looking at plagues. You're looking at anyway, so much bits and pieces come into fore when you are running an urban campaign. The challenge is keeping your players there, so that can definitely be something to look at. Again, not too difficult if your players are expecting that. Okay, so next up, Stranger says, how would you handle inserting a horror mini-adventure into an established campaign? Again, I think that it's, well, perfectly honest with you, if you want to run a horror mini sort of piece, such as if we look at Curse of Strahd, for example, or if you look at like the Aliens movie, I mean, it depends. If you've had Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's fun and amusing and a little bit tense from time to time, but generally it's lighthearted, and then suddenly you insert Alien, where there's this horrific predator thing and everyone is dying and dying very badly and horribly without any kind of humor, there's going to be a disconnect. There's going to, whoa, what happened to the campaign that we were playing? So I would add it in, but I would add it in and make sure that you add the same amount of either humor or drama or trauma. Gary Grant, thank you for that super chat. I do appreciate that. I would look at adding in that kind of stuff to make sure that it's the same. So although the tone is different, it's a darker tone, it's horror, you then want to make sure that it still aligns with the rest of the feeling, the emotions that you've been generating in the rest of your campaign. So that is definitely something to bear in mind there. Okie dokes. Next, Dragonbane67 says, hey GM, I'm running a campaign with a lot of steampunk items. Yay, steampunk. What is the most interesting way you could think of to balance it beyond the standard recoil kind of thing? Okay, Dragonbane67, I need you to unpack that a little bit more for me. You're running a steampunk items, you want recoil. Well, one of the ways of looking at steampunk, and this, I must admit, this was hugely influential for me from a steampunk perspective, and looking at how steampunk could work, was a computer game that came out in 1999 called Arcanum. And in that, it posited that you had the magical realm with the fae and with elves and things like that. And then you had the steampunk world with steam trains, hot air balloons, blimps, flying machines, that kind of thing. And what it said was the more steampunk stuff you have, the more equipment you have, the more steampunk armor you have, the weaker your magic becomes, the more difficult it is to be able to actually use magic. The more magic you have, the greater the chance of the steampunk stuff breaking or just not working because it's being interfered with by the magical field. So think of them as having these kind of spheres and things. So you could certainly start to incorporate that into the game, where the players who are strongly magical or are strongly using the steampunk stuff start to realize, hang on a moment, this stuff is not working. And a very simple system for that is that you could say, right, well, Ephoros Eldor has just become our new monster to beat. Thank you, Ephoros Eldor, for that super chat donation. Thank you. And Mr. Savage has joined us. Welcome. Thank you for that. So awesome. You simply have 5, or you decide how many items of steampunk start to reduce your magic, or vice versa. So if you have a wizard, and the wizard is wearing lots of steampunk, you could then start to reduce that. Now, Anyway, something to think about. And that's quite the distraction that I've had there. So, right, next question. Jack Linder says, Z had an episode, so Z Bashaw, I'm assuming, had an episode on PvP chase through town game. Any suggestions, and is this something only playable online through Roll20 or Skype? Okay, I haven't seen the Z episode. Z Bashaw does some really cool stuff. In terms of PvP chasing, when you say is it only something on like playable online, oh wait a minute, I think I did actually see that Z Bashaw thing. That's where the players were goblins and they were trying to escape. I think. Now, Moonlight 18, I'm going to come to your question a little bit later on, so remind me again, please. Now, so the chase sequence, chasing, the DMG, if you're running 5th edition, has some suggestions on chasing. You need to decide, I think personally, as the game master, what works best for you in terms of your narrative. Is it better that the chased gets caught or not? That's the first question I always ask. Once a chase sequence starts, you are in charge of the entire world. That means if you want the chasers, those that are chasing, to get delayed, you can have an apple cart suddenly wheel across the street because it's your world. You can cause the chased to escape or not. It is your call. But because we use dice generally to determine the outcome of activities and actions and things, you can then tailor it so that you're asking for quite specific things which you may or may not already know that they will pass. So I look at it from that perspective. I don't track it necessarily on the map. If I do, it's vague. Now, there are some cool things coming up in the future. If you watched, if you are on my Twitter, you'll notice that I did a poll the other day. I did one on this channel as well. Anyway, there's some cool things coming up in terms of city layout and how we look at cities and things. Again, I do not advocate that you measure, well, you can run 30 feet, then you can dash 60 feet, but it's difficult terrain because you're running through a market that sells cattle and there's lots of cattle around, so you get a bonus to the... I would make it descriptive, I would make it narrative, I wouldn't make it technical. I would definitely not do that. Okay, so that's my immediate response on that one. And guys, also please, folks, this is for you. I enjoy chatting and talking with you guys. If you feel I don't answer the questions enough, if you want me to go on and on and on and on and on and answer more in terms of how I'm giving these answers, let me know. I'm trying to keep them short so I can get through as many as I can. But if you think that it would be better if I unpacked more, let me know. Okay, all right, so there was that question that came through from Moonlight 18. Any tips for buying dice? This is because I like the 124 people that are currently watching this stream. I really do. We've just signed a deal for sponsorship for 6 months. So the business of YouTube is that as an influencer, obviously, I chat to you guys. You guys are the market. I'm also the market. I spend just a ton of cash on role-playing stuff, right? So the way that it works is we then get people coming to us and they're like, okay, we want you to sell our product to all of your fans because that's what you really are, is you're just an advertising space. That is certainly not what we are, and that's certainly not what a lot of YouTubers are, is that we are not there to sell product. I did not start the channel to do that, and certainly the channel does not take every offer that comes through to us. Occasionally, though, we do get people who come to us and say, look, we've got this product, we think it fits with your channel, and it actually does, because so many times we get emails saying, I really like your channel, think it's good fit for my viewers, for my product. My product is surfboards. And we're like, did you even watch the channel? No, you didn't. You were looking at who our influencer grade, because you get graded as an influencer, and you get to like A+, triple A, B minus, C, E, all the way down. Anyway, so it is something to bear in mind. That's the backstory. Now, we had this company approach us. We used to use Haxtech as our dice of choice. Haxtech, a company based in China, produced some very beautiful metal dice, and we did a couple episodes. Well, we did a show on them, and we looked at that. We unpacked that. They have moved on. I think China has gone through some major regulational changes recently. As of yesterday, undead and the zombies and death and that sort of thing in computer games is now illegal in China. So if you have undead in your game, they have to come out. By law, they have to come out. So it's a very interesting space that's currently going on there, and I think that that is what has happened to that entire situation. So I haven't heard from Haxtech now in a couple months, which is unfortunate because I really did like their dice. Enter Q Workshop. Now this announcement's only going to come out on the 1st of May, so this is just between me and you 127 people. Q Workshop approached us a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we've got these dice, what do you think? I like dice. I have bags of dice. I'm just looking at all the one bag of dice is actually holding up my light. It's acting as a weight because it's easily 3 or 4 pounds worth of dice. So Q Workshop has now signed a deal with us that we will now become like an advocate for them. We checked out their dice. They are sending me dice. I have a set of their dice already. They're really, really cool dice. So there's some really cool stuff coming out. Something to definitely look at is Q Workshop. So there we go. That's my very long answer to that very, very short question. Right. So someone said D20 Modern. Did I hear someone say D20 Modern? Is it within arm's reach? Yes, it is. D20 Modern. It's out of print, so you can only pick it up if you're lucky, secondhand. This is, as far as I am concerned, one of the best D20 role-playing systems out there. Do not think of it as Dungeons and Dragons. This is a D20. It is D20, so you're using that 20-sided dice. Yes, you are. But it is a great system. I absolutely love it. I have as many of the expansions as I could. This expansion book, by the way, and I'm punting them because I love them. This one, D20 Future, is, I think, still the science fiction RPG to beat. When you add that to D20 Modern, I think it is absolutely, absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. So yeah, D20 Modern I absolutely advocate, without a doubt. Yes, we'll do a dice preview. Episode will be on the 15th of May of their dice, if they get here in time. The set that I have is from their old range, so they're like, no, we'd rather send you new stuff, and you can have a look at that. So that's definitely something to look at. I'm going to try and get them to give me some giveaways to give away at Gen Con to people who make the effort to come and find me. I will probably be wandering around looking like this, not knowing what is going on, since it is our very first one. Okay, back to questions, because it is a question-centric show today. Zonlord says, question, a few sessions back, you led the creation of a custom insectoid race. Yes, the Haspa. And likely several others. Yes, the Spreen was one of the other ones that we wanted to go through. And you were not able to stick through the whole stream to see the race created. Would you be willing to post it somewhere? Well, you know what this is. It's a great question because, yes, we did design it. Let me just open this up here quickly. Give me one moment, if you please. The Haspa. There we go. I'm going to just very quickly remind you of what that looked like. There it is there on World Anvil. World Anvil, of course, one of our major sponsors for the Dungeons & Dragons Ghosts of Saltmarsh game, for How to Be a Great GM in general. This is where we created the Haspa. It was one of many insectoid races. We hadn't yet got to building it further, simply because we ran out of stream time. So you want me to share it? I will share it in abso-friggin-lutely way. Give me 2 seconds, because if I don't do this now, it's going to go out the head. You know, my students always used to say, oh, you should smoke weed. You'd be good on weed. And I'm like, I am already not on this planet. So, yes. let's just do that. And let's save this here. I'm going to put it down here. Give me a second. Give me a second. Sorry, this is me. This is me making sure that this is the Hasper race card. It is saved. I am going to thankfully not have that screen up. I'm going to move that there. Give me a second. Give me a second. 1 second. This is the power of very slow computer use. And back in the day, I used to be so quick on tabbing and just done. And, you know, then you turn 30 and you start slowing down and you get to 35 and you're like, oh my God. And then you get over 35 and you're like, well, this is it. This is it. I'm going to put it into the Discord chat for you. Thank you. There we go. Thank you for that support. It's going to help pay for the old age home that I'm definitely heading towards by the looks of things. I'm going to throw it into NPC and monster building because we can. So we got a server. We have a channel on the server called NPC and Monster Builds. And I'm going to throw it in there for you so you can grab it. Now, where the hell did I save it? There we go. Hasper race card and boom, in the server. Just like that. So there you go. And Zonlord's there already. Right. So yeah, absolutely. We designed that character, that race in the last chat. There we go. Zombie Cake. Zombie Cake is the one to beat. Cake or Death or Zombie Cake. No, it doesn't sound appetizing as much as I like cake. Now I'm going to go and get cake after the stream. You see, this is what happens. This is what happens. They say, oh, you're fat because you put food in your mouth. No, we're fat because, well, someone says zombie cake and then suddenly you need cake. That's how life works. Anyway, back to questions. Back to questions. Hell. Hello, Hell. Hell has a question. I have a PC who recently multi-classed into a warlock, and I'm struggling role-playing as his patron. How can I handle interactions between him and his Demon Lord patron? Well, I would have your Demon Lord patron played by the GM to begin with. I think that is something that is worth looking at. To have a conversation with yourself about you having a conversation between yourself and a higher power is difficult. The GM should know where your patron should be heading. At the very least, you should discuss it with them. The challenge with those interactions is you don't want them to slow the game down, so you want to do them during downtime, when the party is resting or sleeping or taking a pause or a breather. Maybe they go shopping, your character doesn't want anything. Better yet, your character asks another character, hey, would you please pick me up 3 dozen caltrops and an orange and a 10-foot pole. Get someone else's PC to go out and do some shopping for you. It integrates your PCs together. It kind of builds a bit of a bond, whilst you then go off and have this conversation with the patron. Now, these patrons are generally mysterious and you know, they've got hidden agendas and the like. By incorporating and getting your GM to play it, it allows you to then have an element of unknown. If it is just you having a conversation with yourself, that conversation doesn't need to be expressed to the rest of the party. It's in your head. What I would do is I would go to the party and seek counsel. My Patreon and I, as you know, he provides me with my power, and last night I was communing and they've asked me to do something which I'm not entirely sure I'm able to do. You know, make it a PC to PC moment rather than a PC to NPC PC, if that makes sense, to continue the acronyms. Yeah, so there we go. Definitely something to think about. Make it try and figure out if your GM doesn't want to touch you and they're like, whoa, then that's fine. But then take the story to the rest of your PCs. Don't just play with yourself in the corner. Okay, next question. Where are we? Okay, sorry, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. So the rule is, as the pages update, I just answer the next question that I see, which is from White Tiger 225. And it changes. Scroll. Any tips on making constellations for your world? Should I actually draw up the star and line patterns, or just make names and that is it? Do the constellations have any kind of power or effect? Are they simply balls of gas floating thousands and thousands of light years away, in which case they are purely narrative and descriptive, and then all that you need to do is just write down the names of those star constellations? Or do they actually have some kind of power? Do they have some kind of effect that allows the player characters to interact with them or to draw inspiration and power from them? If they do, then yes, I would elaborate a little bit more. You might draw one or two of the constellations if you really want to do that. If you look at Dragon Age Inquisition, the computer game, there they had the constellations for the Ocularum. No, it wasn't the Ocularum, was it? Yeah, it was, no, it wasn't the Ocularum. Arcanomenon. There was those bally sphery things where you basically were redrawing with a single line the constellations that were basically used within the game. I got really bored and very frustrated because they were puzzles. They were puzzles where you had to work out how to draw it in a single line. It was a puzzle that they put into the game. I never finished them all, so I could be talking out of turn here. But aside from giving you access to loot that was hidden long ago, there was zero integration between the constellations and the rest of the game. It was just a bit of fluff. Great fluff? No, I don't think so. Sangres, thank you for that. I don't think it was great fluff. It was just fluff. So yeah, look to the angles, look to the direction that you want, and then go from there. What do you think of high level play in 5th edition? Says Seldosri. Seldosri, high level play in 5th edition. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like it. I don't like it. High level play in Dungeons and Dragons, and this is the biggest issue that I have with level based games. What do level-based games allow your character to do? If you look at it from a nuts and bolts perspective, in terms of adding levels, it allows your character to take more damage. It allows your character to deal more damage in different ways. That's on the base. It also allows your character to control more things. So you could, in theory, affect 50 people as opposed to one person as you advance in power. The challenge becomes you then have a superhero effect. Once the party is so powerful that unless you are throwing equally powerful adversaries against them, they start to just walk through everything, and it gets to a point where there's a power imbalance. There's a power shift from kings and queens having armies. Those armies are irrelevant next to a wizard who can cast wish. Those armies are irrelevant next to a priest who can simply just raise armies of undead. Those armies are irrelevant against a fighter or a barbarian who basically takes no damage from non-magical weapons. I have an army of 1,000 men, but they all are wielding good old-fashioned metal weapons. Well, then they cannot damage said character. So what it becomes is it's a superhero problem. When you look at superhero films, not Avengers Endgame, that's no spoilers here, but if you go back to the original Superman movies from the 80s, the problem was nothing can hurt Superman except for kryptonite. So it's a giant MacGuffin. Every Superman movie has kryptonite involved in it, or they had to bring in General Zod, who was Superman. So you're either Supermaning against each other or you're not. High-level campaigns can be a lot of fun, absolutely. And there are plenty of monsters and things in all of the books that talk to, oh, this monster's got 1,000 hit points and is immune to everything except for one little type of attack. All that you're doing is you're just increasing the amount of time that's spent describing the battles, and the battles become longer and more, either longer or ridiculously short to the point that they become a waste of time. So, you know, when we watch, again, going to superheroes, when you're watching Captain America being attacked by 12 regular guards, you go, those guards don't stand a chance. There's no tension in the sequence other than lots of really funky camera work and some very fancy maneuvering and a humorous way in which these people are beaten up. When you translate that to a role-playing game, you suddenly go, it's just the GM describing a lot of fancy maneuvers, but the outcome is still the same. So that's my personal opinion. I do think that games that don't allow you to level up, but that allow you to upskill your character so your character's chances of success improve, I do think those handle higher levels better. I have yet to close my mind on that subject, however. Right. Next question. Boolia says, how do you plan a campaign session to go for a certain time frame? Boolia, that is a question that I have answered in depth in one of the latest GM video sessions. There's 50 experience points for somebody. If you head on over, find that GM video that I released, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, time and time management, how to use time to run your game. It literally breaks it down to, I would say it's not something new. It's not something that I came up with in terms of, oh, well, this is how long a session should take, etc., etc. It is something that is just part of the zeitgeist, I think, in terms of life, in terms of role playing. So you can go and have a look at that video. If someone finds a link, puts it into the chat, I'll give you 50 experience points for that. Now, yeah, so that's definitely out there. It's quite easy math if you want to look at it from a purely mathematical perspective. If you want to make it a little bit more advanced than that, there we go. Gedrian, and it was gone already. Good lord, where is it? Gedrian Firestorm gets it. You got in there first. Thank you for that. Raven Alexi getting in there as well. So there's the link to those videos. Yeah, it's definitely doable and it's definitely controllable. So have a look at that. Next question. I'm going to go until the hour on questions, and then we're going to do a little bit of creative, right? You know, we're going to do something different, right? Absol's Story of Fiction says, do you roll dice first, then perform an action, or perform an action first, then roll dice, since charisma is sometimes done backwards? You know, it is an excellent point that you raise, and when you look at it, you go, well, yes, this is a case of the craziness, I would say, of role-playing. Not the craziness. This is where the rules and our nature break down, I think. When you look at combat, you don't describe how you swing majestically and slice your opponent into pieces and then roll to see if you hit them. You roll to see if you hit them first, and then you swing and slice. When it comes to social checks like charisma or things along those lines, I agree. We generally, and I'm guilty of it myself, will do the whole speech first, and then roll a charisma check, and then fail. Whereas the actual performance of that speech was worthy of a 19 or a 17, you getting a 2 on the dice, or a 1 even. I believe that you are quite right. It is something that I'm going to try and institute in my own games. You want to try and persuade the thieves to abandon their evil ways? Roll. Okay, you got a 17. Now tell me what you got, rather than doing it the other way around. It is definitely something we have to be conscious of. It's just the turn flow needs to happen. I know there are other groups out there that definitely do the roll first and then the charisma afterwards. So you are not alone in that. Honourable 596. Honourable. I just have to make sure that Restream chat hasn't frozen again. 10:43. Yes, it looks like I'm 10 minutes behind. I hate it. But I love it because it allows me to see both streams at the same time. But I hate it, but I love it. And someone suggested that I install chat box, and now all the questions are gone because I refreshed Restream. Okay, that's me learning a lesson. I'm not getting anything coming through on Restream. Why? I hate you so much right now. Okay, so here come the questions again. It takes some time, obviously, to pull them across. So there might be a chunk of questions for the last 10 minutes that have been lost. Talking about that natural one. VVK says, hello, I'm having trouble role-playing or acting my character, a grave domain cleric. I know his traits and history, but I fail to act him out. I've watched your type of character videos, and I think he's close to a protector, but it's still a little bit difficult as I'm a newbie to Dungeons & Dragons, but could you go a little bit deeper into how I could play him, the grave domain cleric? You know, I have just finished reading out, and this is a punt. It's going to happen, right? But I have had a lot of people come back to me saying this is great. I've just finished reading out this book. This is the book that I wrote, Complete Guide to Creating Epic Campaigns. And in this book, one of the things that I talk about for GMs, mind you, so this is a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question, Vivek. But one of the things is that in here, we're talking about NPC dialogue. And NPC dialogue, if you think about it, dialogue is often the way that determines your character. So in Japan, I find it very frustrating because a lot of the Japanese are not talkative. They're very reserved people until you get to know them. And even then, you still have to sort of pull information out because they're not brusque and gregarious and totally obsessed with finding out what's going on in other people's world. So I think there's a lot of invading going on. But dialogue is often a window into who the person is. The way I talk, for example, informs you as to a whole lot of things that are going on in my past and in who I am. So when it comes to role-playing your character, in the book, we talk about 13, I counted it, 13, I don't have enough fingers, 13 things that we as humans have to talk about in our daily existence. 13 things. Now, when you look at your grave domain cleric, the question that I need to ask you is, yes, they're a protector. So that's great. So that gives you immediately one entire conversation on its own and continuous conversation moving forward. They are protecting the party. How are they doing that? Are they questioning the party? Do you have the right gear? Do you have the suitable potions? Are you aware of how we should fight together to protect one another? So there's a whole chain that you can go on in terms of how they express that protection. They could also believe that the protection is fundamentally linked, and they should, in my opinion, because they are a cleric, to their god. So do they talk about their god to the other PCs? You know, you really would be better protected if you worshipped Gashul. Gashul, being the god of oblivion, is all about making sure that everything is protected. However, whatever your god might be. So, that is two of the things that you could add. So dialogue really creates life for a character, I believe anyway, and it gives us insight into that character. Character just sitting there quietly at the table has zero personality. We don't know about them, we don't know what they think about, we don't know what they plan or plot about. How do we learn that? Through dialogue, sitting around the table and talking to the other PCs. And how do they talk to the other PCs? Is it condescending? Is it agreeable? Is it approachable? Is it so there are a few things in there that you can certainly look at. If you want the book, it's the PDF is available online, or you can actually get the hard copy from blurb.com. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but it is a very complicated question. It really is a complicated question. The Baker of Banana Bread. I'm going to give you 50 experience points just for a name like that. Banana bread is one of my favorites. Freshly baked banana bread with butter on top of it. That's it. Roll me over. I'm done. I'm launching a new campaign and session 0 is tomorrow. I wanted to know what would be some good questions for them. Interestingly enough, we have just done a session 0 video. This is, again, another 50 experience points for those of you that want the experience points. We've just done a session 0 video in our campaign creators series. I think it is session 12 of the campaign creators series. where we have literally just gone through what should you be looking for, what should you be asking in your session 0 if it's a homebrew world. I have done, and this is even earlier, this is now years ago, videos on how to run a session 0 and what questions you should be asking on just from a session 0 perspective. So Ephoros Eldor is on the button in terms of finding those links, certainly in YouTube anyway. So yeah, there are some very important questions that you need to ask in that session 0, and a lot of them don't necessarily relate to the story. You shouldn't even be running the story as far as I'm concerned. Your master plot, your main plot shouldn't even appear in that session 0. That session 0 is designed for the players to see if they like their characters, and for the players to see if they like your world, and for you to see if you like your world. So that's definitely something to think about there. Right, next question is Alkim Childers says, what are some suggestions I can have about playing evil characters with a party of morally goody two-shoes? I'm going to direct you back to the channel. There is definitely a video there. Abyssal Dragon Slayer, thank you for that. I'm going to come to that question shortly after I've looked at this goody two-shoes question. I have done a video on how to play evil characters within a good group. The most important thing is that the evil character cannot be evil towards the group. They can be evil outside of the group. It's as simple as that. That's definitely how they and what they need to do is be good for the group. So I'm going to quickly jump ahead here to Abyssal Dragon Slayer after that fantastic donation support there. I'm running an underwater campaign where the players are in an adventurers guild. Any idea on how I can get them more interested in the setting and the NPCs than just taking quests and getting loot? Yes, absolutely. I would firstly introduce a rival party that guild is going to start hiring to do missions. The rival party I would fill with arrogant people who openly challenge them. I would start to have the guild send them on more delicate missions that require a bit more finesse from an emotional perspective, that kind of thing. So that's definitely something to look at. Then I would make sure as well to give them stuff and then have it stolen and taken away by members within that guild. Give them a position within that guild, let them start to build up some loyalty, and then involve them in some politicking. So that's another way of doing it. Definitely something to look at in terms of that. Take it away from necessarily the adventure of go get to let's discuss and let me get your opinion. Who do you support, etc. So that's something to look at. Wolfric Brandt, thank you for that donation. You can only play online, absolutely. How would you screen interview people for an online game? Yeah, look, online is interesting. If you don't know about this already, we have our own platform, the Web Goblin, who's a partner in this channel. He is a computer science master, wizard. Don't tell him that I said that, though, otherwise his head is just going to go. And I need someone to carry my bags around Gen Con. He has written, and I've worked with him on this, obviously, we work together as a team. He has written RPGTablefinder.com. So head on over to www.rpgtablefinder.com. I'll put it here in the rpgtablefinder.com, and have a look over there, see what you think. There are people there. There's a lot of stuff that we have put in terms of finding people, making sure that you can see people's backgrounds and stories and that kind of thing. So definitely something to have a look at there, without a doubt. Now I'm being asked, look at Twitch. What am I looking at? Please check Twitch chat soon. Please check Twitch chat soon. What am I checking for? I see 12-sided guy. Thank you for that 100 bits donation. We do love our bits. Yes, we do. When you refresh stream, your on-stream chat box stopped updating. Ah, is that what's happened? Oh, I see. Okay, well, let's see if we can fix that. That is which box now? Restream chat. There we go. Bingo. If I take this away, be gone, you foul creature. Mac McCune, thank you for that. $10. We do appreciate that, really do. And I'm going to bring back the restream. Has that fixed it? I don't think so. Let me just what can I do? I need some technical help. Oh my god, it's all falling apart. It's all over now. I don't know. Let's try and bring it back. Transition. Is that working? It looks like it's working. Looks like it could be working. Okay, panic over. We can all calm down now. Don't worry. Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic, for heaven's sakes. Just calm yourself down. I'm going to drink some coffee. Right. There we go. Panic over. Panic over. Yes. Right. So, Honourable 596 has been asking a question for a while. You skipped him because of the refresh. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, let's go back there. Honourable 596, dedication to that Control V, Control V, Control V. It's like one day he will answer my question or my V button will stop working. Honourable 596, question reposted from everywhere else. This is a serious question. I made a great old one, Warlock, with the Haunted One background, whose backstory currently consists of learn things best left unlearned. And whose personality is incredibly paranoid. It's not paranoia if they are actually trying to kill you. It's sensibility. He trusts no one for fear that they may be serving as the eyes and ears of someone else. Would you have his patron be a thing that he's hiding from and that he basically stole his powers from? Or should I have a patron that is something he came to for protection? That is an interesting question, and I can see why everyone is basically retweeting it, well, reposting it, I suppose. Now, it's an interesting one. Let's see. If having them afraid of the old one is going to break the party, so you've already got someone who's paranoid. So I hope that they are trusting of the party. I would hope that they turn to the party for support and for help. Point number one. Point number two, there needs to be a solution. There needs to be a solution. So, and now I'm having flashbacks. What video have I done? Is it Player that's coming out this week? Could be. Player comes out on Sunday night, and I recall talking about having to have solutions already in play. Oh yes, that's right. So yes, this week's video is on family. Sorry, mind blank. This week's video is on family, and the patron basically becomes the family of the Warlock. So watch that video. It's going to help you, I think. Now, when we are talking about these kinds of bonds, really, this patron, if the patron is there to help your character, I feel that that could be fairly mundane. I feel that that is basically just then a patron. And how are the rest of the party going to care? It's like, yeah, okay, so you have a patron. Who cares? If the patron is actively hunting your character, then, again, you've got to balance it out. So there's another video on playing hunted characters. That's where you've got to go to your GM, obviously. Talk to the GM and say, well, look, this is the story. But go to the GM with a solution as well and say, well, this is the story. My patron is hunting me. I've stolen my patron's powers. My solution would be that my character eventually ends up trusting a being, and we discover that that being is also an old one in disguise who's been testing my character to see whether my character is worthy and is capable of overcoming their inherent distrust of life. That to me is on the immediate surface of saying, okay, well, there's the character arc. The character starts as paranoid and terrified of everything. What does the character need to do? The character needs to realize that the reason for the paranoia is the monster that's hunting them, and until they get rid of the paranoia, they will never be able to get rid of the monster. Once they have learned to trust, and that is through the character building the relationships with the fellow PCs, once they have learned to accept that not everyone is trying to kill them, just most of the NPCs that the GM will be coming and throwing at them, then they can start to make contact with somebody else who wants them to build up trust. But if your GM is smart, they will have that person also betray your character as a final test. I betrayed you, did you forgive me? Because it sounds like your character also needs to have a whole bunch of forgiveness. This is really a very deep psychological discussion here, but it is a journey that I think is much more interesting. Again, also, that patron, that evil patron who is hunting you, it should not interfere with the story's plot. So you shouldn't have your character every episode going, oh, I can't go into that castle. That castle looks like it's watching me. No, because then where's the adventure going to go? Your character should go into the castle absolutely certain that the gargoyles are watching, and that the rats are definitely messengers to the old one that is after. But they should still go along. They should still move forward. And of course, they should ask the party to help them try and confront the old one as and when that happens. So there we go. Have a look at that. That's some off the top of my head thoughts. Tendril Mind says, hi guy, I played Daniel, the David Bowie fan, in your Mars game at Otsuka. Otsuka, yes, that was a lot of fun, I believe. Well, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Running Vampire 5th edition soon for my regular group after Tomb of Annihilation. Moving more towards story over dice. Yay! The new system is rather daunting. Any advice? Vampire is quite a daunting system, and I must admit, when I looked at Vampire, I was like, I'm just going to write a Vampire module for the D20 modern system. So that's what I did. I cheated. Again, advice, you've said you want to move more towards story rather than towards mechanics. My advice certainly would be to get the rest of your players say, guys, listen, this is a new system. So point number one, you guys need to look at the character creation rules. I will look at the mechanical rules, and together we're going to figure this out after sessions. So whenever I look at a new system, I try to identify what is the core mechanic. So if you look at D20 at Dungeons and Dragons, the core mechanic is roll a 20-sided dice, add some numbers from statistics that are derived from attributes, and overcome another number. That other number could either be made up or it could be a value that's prescribed. In Vampire, I cheated. I didn't play Vampire. So I'm trying to remember. And when I did look at the Vampire system, this was a long time ago. This was World of Darkness type of stuff, if I recall. It was pips. And you had different pips which allowed you to add to your dice or something like that. Anyway, again, understand the fundamental core mechanic. Run the game, make your calls during the game based on your understanding of the fundamental core mechanic on the fly. Don't worry about it if it seems unbalanced now, because if you have warned your players and you've said, guys, we are learning here, warned them of that at the end of the session, then you can then sit back and go, okay, so we had underwater combat. This is what I made the ruling of. Let's go check the books to see. And then everybody checks the books, or whoever's not checking the books is buying ridiculously expensive pizza, because that's the sad thing about living in Tokyo. Pizza is so expensive. It really is expensive. Anyway, someone goes and buys pizza while the rest of you look up the rules, and then you learn together. You work through those together. So that is something that I would have a look at. Alisar Mithrandir, thank you for that donation. How do you roleplay a character who has high intelligence, wisdom, or charisma when you yourself aren't intelligent, wise, or charismatic? Oh, that age-old question. That age-old question. Yes, it does pose a great challenge. So, let's talk about charisma first, because I think this is the one that is, of the bunch, the easiest. Charisma is a whole bunch of things. It's the X factor. We talk about the X factor in the film industry and in YouTube. It's like some YouTubers have got the X factor, some don't. Cameron F, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Very kind of you. The X factor is something that's intangible. Why did we love watching Woody Allen? He wasn't visually very sexy. It could be, but you know, something to bear in mind. It's the X factor. So when it comes to role-playing high charisma, that is when you look at your dice. So it doesn't matter what system you're using. Various role-playing systems I know of have a seduction, charisma. There are a whole bunch of names that it has been called in the past. Rely on those and then describe how someone with high charisma would go about that. So if you are looking at a beautiful, beautiful young woman and your character wants to seduce that one young woman, you yourself may not necessarily have the skills to do so. However, you would describe that, you know, I go up to the young woman and I ask, is this your chainmail? I don't know. It's something to think about. So charisma, I would base it on the role, and then I would describe the actions. I wouldn't necessarily describe or try and talk in that sense. If you are a first-person table, that's something to think about. Karen F, thank you again. Really do appreciate that. Intelligence and wisdom. Wisdom is the trickiest one, because wisdom to me is really the major difference between, say, a 12-year-old role player, a 20-year-old role player, and a 50-year-old role player. And it's not because the 50-year-old has lived for 50 years. I have had a tremendous amount of experience in the wild. I have climbed up trees to avoid being gored by a rhinoceros. I have been in the middle of a buffalo herd that could have killed us at any moment. I have lain with lions. They were darted, thank God. So from that perspective, when I'm playing with a game master who has zero wildlife experience, my wisdom comes through and my survival checks are much, much higher because I know how to survive in the wild. Find a McDonald's and then beg them to give you something. So, you know, there are many ways of doing these things. Mad Dog 2010-15, thank you for that subscription. Do appreciate it. So, when it comes to wisdom, again, go back to your roles, allow your roles to survive. And you don't have to say, oh, well, we're out on the tropical island, so that means I have to weave myself a hat to avoid sunburn, because sunburn will dehydrate you and sap you of your energy faster than not necessarily having immediate access to water. Hat is important if you are light-skinned, for example. So, or if you're not used to being in an incredibly hot environment. Things like that. You don't have to know that. Let the role work. And then I want to make a survival check to survive in the Arctic tundra. Excellent. What's your role? 22. Okay, what are you doing? Well, I go about using my character's skilled knowledge to avoid dying in the tundra. You can describe it. Really get into the description of the actions or of the action of doing. When it comes to intelligence, intelligence is probably one of the biggest areas where we rely on the player rather than on the character knowledge. And there's a reason for it. We want to play games where we're solving the puzzles and we're solving the riddles in our own heads rather than just relying on the dice to work. I think that everybody who role plays has already stepped up in terms of their intelligence bar, because role playing requires theater of the mind a lot of the time. And so that means you're already capable of thinking about things in a slightly different way. High intelligence is difficult to play through. And oftentimes the easier route is to play it that the intelligence is there, but it's the knowledge factor. It's the, I remember facts about the birds and the bees, but don't ask me to change a tire. I haven't got a clue on how to do that. No, that actually is true. I changed a tire once and then decided that was not for me. So anyway, so right. Anyway, it is a complicated question. It is a difficult question. And I would always just fall back to let the dice tell you what your outcome is, and then work from there and describe it rather than try and live through it and try and talk through it. So there we go. Okay, next question. Let's see. Mac McCune, I've got a repost here. What are your thoughts on a barbarian playing champion archetype from the fighter instead of the barbarian archetypes, or a monk playing a thief archetype, for example? That's a very D&D centric question. I think that, well, it's a double-sided coin, and like all coins that exist in our current dimension, when you look at systems like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's like, you are a this and you sit in this space and you cannot move into that space, they're very rigid. But that rigidity in terms of character flexibility allows people to know what their role is. I'm a cleric. My role is to defeat the undead, or to heal the party, or to intervene with deities. I'm a wizard. I will just help do wizardy things. It gives structure, and it gives a clear purview for the character class. Flip that around where you have systems that don't have classes, systems where you can just add and build as you like, systems that I prefer. You get players who go, well, I don't know what I should do because I don't have my initial 6 to choose from, or my initial 12 classes to choose from. I don't know what I should do. So there is a lack sometimes that happens. So when you start to talk about, okay, well, let's deconstruct Dungeons and Dragons so that you can take this class and take that build, or you can take this backstory and you can take this and you can take that. What starts to happen is that you start to lose the focus of the classes and you start to get into a classless system. If you have players who like classless systems, like myself, it works well. If you have players who are fairly inexperienced or who are not always sure of what they want to do or how they want to play, then it doesn't. So it starts to muddle it. So in your group, if your group is happy to do it, do it. If your group is, we need direction, then I would avoid it. That's my personal opinion. As far as balance is concerned, that's a whole different kettle of fish altogether. I've only just been playing a barbarian who worships a totem is his archetype, and yeah, very interesting. Although if that barbarian ever existed in real life, anyone who's been watching Save or Dice will know that Bjork, the barbarian that I've been running, he's not like other barbarians. He's much more team focused and is definitely certainly all about building up of leadership and of finding harmony within the group while still being a raging barbarian. So there we go. Next question is off to bed, Trower Barton 69. Good night. Just remember, the Ghosts of Saltmarsh is coming out specifically for UK time, Europe time. So I know it's sort of like 3 a.m. In Europe, somewhere around there. Ghosts of Saltmarsh, very specifically, is designed for a European time zone, so 8 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. Central Europe, I believe. Question from Graham Bennett. Hi, guy. Hello, Graham. I've gotten into D&D extremely recently. Okay, good. But I've gotten invested quite quickly. It does sometimes happen. They should have warned you on the box. I haven't played yet, but I love storytelling. My family wants me to DM for them. Would that be wise? Absolutely, it would be wise. Why not? I would hate to DM for my mother. That would be an exercise in futility and pain and suffering. But that's also because it's not a mindset that she has. So look at the mindset of the folk that will be playing. My sister and her beloved at the moment do want me to role play to run a game for them when I get back, and I will happily do that. I'll be very curious to see what the outcome was of that. Make sure though that you remain impartial. That is the biggest thing, is don't favor one over the other. Don't sort of look at it and go, well, this is this or this is that. Try and keep it neutral from a rules perspective. Definitely focus on that. Also, try not to carry storylines that are drawn from your own collective familial experience. Try and avoid that too. Don't impersonate an aunt or an uncle or a cousin that everybody knows about, because again, that's showing favoritism or collective negativity towards a member of the family. So I would avoid that too. But don't take family advice from me. My family were very close as long as there's 500 or more kilometers of very dangerous geography in between us. So there we go. Next question, Infinite Wanderer says, I said I was going to stop on the hour. What happened? That was almost half an hour ago. Will your Saltmarsh campaign be uploaded to YouTube? I have asked WotC, the powers that be behind the Dungeons & Dragons campaign, whether they will put it up onto YouTube or not. We are still discussing that, really. So there you are. It is definitely something to bear in mind. So think about that. By the way, Americans can't pronounce my last name, but you got it right first time. I watch a lot of television, I suppose, and read lots of books. So there we go. I'm glad I got it right. This is always shot in the dark. There we go. So SA says, have you ever run the Dungeons and Dragons starter adventure, The Lost Mines of Phandelver? If so, how do you like it, and do you have any tips on running it? Yes, I started when 5th edition first came out. We were very skeptical, naturally. We were 3.5ers. Actually, at that stage, we were Pathfinders, because Pathfinder was a better system than 3.5, in my opinion. So the box set came out. We bought the box set, started to read through the rules, and went, okay, oh, don't like that, oh, like this, don't like that, like this, don't like that. And we started to run through it. Now, we did the first one. So if you haven't done Mines of Phandelver, here's a spoiler alert, be aware. But the first section is a goblin encounter and goblin cave. My party ended up taking one of the goblin ambushers prisoner, tying them onto the end of a 10-foot pole, and then using them as a trap detector as they went through the cave. They quite literally tapped the ground with the goblin and the walls, and when things happened, then they pulled the stick back, and if the goblin survived, the goblin survived. So we had a lot of fun with that. I was then taken through, and I haven't seen him in the chat today, but Game Master's Vault, he ran us through a 9-hour mega session of that first encounter and scenario of Mines of Phandelver, the cave and everything that goes on within it. It was a blast. The advice that I have for you is that let your players enjoy this experience, let them see what's going on, and then you can move from there. The second half, once you get into the town and there's all that sort of politics and stuff, I never got there. Because once we'd finished with the encounter in the mine, in the caves and that kind of stuff, we're like, well, that's brilliant. Let's go run our own campaigns now. We don't have to go further. So I've actually never got in further. I've never faced the green dragon that's on the box, so I can't really comment too much on that one. Okay, Dragon Love Water question: any tips for someone wanting to protect themselves from plagiarism if they want to publish homebrew content, or even just don't want someone to use their idea to make money? Dragon Love Water, this is a very complicated question. It's a very legally heavy question as well. It depends on which country you're based in. There are all kinds of ramifications. When you write something down, some countries, such as South Africa, the moment you write something down onto paper and you put a date on it, and it's all, there, it's yours from a copyright perspective. If you can prove that somebody took your work and reworked it and redid it and made money from it, you can claim damages. But you have to prove how they got hold of your work, when they got hold of your work, and that your work inspired them to write whatever it is that they did. So if they just copied entire paragraphs out, it's really easy. If it is a derivative, then there's a major problem. Other countries don't have that. There's some countries where you have to take a copy of what you've written, put it into an envelope, post it to yourself so that it gets all of the official post office stamps on it, and then prove that that envelope's never been opened. Others, you've got to put it into a safety deposit box with a lawyer present to prove. It becomes really tricky when we're talking about intellectual property. The Mind Flayer, the Illithid from Dungeons and Dragons, is a great example. It is a copyrighted creature. It was derived, it was generated, it was created by Dungeons and Dragons, the tentacled alien species. Does that mean that I, as a role player, cannot create a race of squid folk who are aquatic, who use the octopus as the inspiration behind how they look, and that they communicate with their tentacles? Is that copyright or not? The answer is it's not. Wizards could make a very strong case that I have been role-playing for 25 years and saw the Illithid in their 2nd edition Monsters Manual, and that is what has inspired me. I could counter-argue by saying actually they're based on the Quarren from the Star Wars universe, where they have tentacles and they're more of an aquatic species because they were raised on Mon Calamari as established by the Star Wars canon circa 1982 or 84 or 85. I could also say there are squid and cuttlefish in our oceans, and that's what inspired me. It would be, from a litigation perspective, a nightmare for WotC to try and prove that I had stolen their Illithid idea. On the other hand, if I created an alien tentacle race that came from another dimension, that had a collective mindset of taking over the world and lived in a cave in the mountains, now it starts to border on, well, wait a second, isn't that just an Illithid? So it's a complicated question, and you can see that I have delved into this quite heavily. Copyright law is a very big topic whenever you go to script writing conventions and things, because it is a major point, and I'm not going to say much more on that. It's just it is complicated. That's the bottom line. Sadly, it is complicated. Okay, so Leon Lee says, I am planning a session in which my PCs hide from a giant while keeping on the move until they reach the next safe spot. What would your advice be so that it's not just roll a stealth times 9? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about this in a couple episodes coming up of How to Be a Great GM. I've just finished writing my adventure for the Patreons of the How to Be a Great GM channel. So Patreons at the $15 tier at the end of this month, they're all going to get this adventure. Let me bring it up for you, as a matter of fact. So this is a sneak peek of the adventure. The reason why I'm bringing up this adventure is not because I want you all to go and become Patreons for the month that you can get the adventure. It is so that I can answer your question, because this entire adventure, let me go there now. This adventure, oh, look at that. My camera moved. Let's get rid of that. Oh, wrong way. There we go. This entire... That's better. This entire adventure is a sneak adventure. Okay, so you can see behind me here the Valley of the Green Light for characters 3 to level 5. And this is the entire adventure. I'm still scrolling. Still going. It's a dinosaur adventure. It is 8,500 words of sneaking. Guess how much sneaking is in there? There's not a lot of sneaking in there. They're riding dinosaurs, they're escaping from dinosaurs, they are fighting all kinds of things. Here is the map that I created. I used Incarnate here for the map itself, and then it's brought into World Anvil, where I put in all of these pins which describes this is the start of the adventure, this is the enemy camp, these are the articles that are related to it. They sneak or escape from the Great Valley to the Green Valley. They got to get there, and there's 4 paths that they can take. So when you come to designing your escape from giant, don't look at it in terms of I am only using stealth. What are the paths that they can take to escape from this giant? Can they go up into the trees? Can they go into a cave system underground? Can they follow a river system? And those start to inform your role. So if the characters come here through the Car Swamps, These desolate wastes seem endless and remarkably full of sticky mud and deep cold pools that contain vicious leeches. The denizens of this area cover themselves in local mud and can be quite invisible when they want to. This now becomes a social challenge. They meet those denizens of the mud. It can become an encounter with the leeches that they have to do quietly whilst the giant is busy pursuing them. It can become a survival where they start to use the mud to ward off of those leeches. So the whole idea is to unpack a simple idea into a full-scale adventure. And that it is it next week? No, it's not next week. Next week is Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It is the week after that. No, it's not the week after that. Is it? Could be. I'm not sure. Anyway, one of the GM videos that are coming up shortly is taking a simple idea and then expounding and expanding upon it to turn it into a full-scale game. So there we go. Something to bear in mind. Good night. Goodbye, Board Lich. Thank you for being part of the stream for as long as you have been. I do appreciate that. Now, questions. Where are we? I did see there was someone mentioning Mr. Humes, Mark Humes. Very good GM. Very, very, very good GM. Okay. Right. Question. Christoffet Olsen. Get it updated just as I was about to ask it. Christoffet, where are we? Christoffet Olsen. How would you reward the player that plays Wizard of Necromancy? I would reward them as one normally would. I'm not entirely sure of your question there, Christoffet Olsen. When playing Wizards of Necromancy, here's an interesting little thing to think about, to maybe suggest to the player. Necromancy is the study of undeath and undead, but a lot of it also has to do with preserving the dead. Technically, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, or Da Vinci, as I was told to pronounce it, Leonardo da Vinci, both of them were necromancers. Both of them violated the edicts of the Pope and of the Catholic Church, which said that you are not allowed to cut up dead bodies, for it is desecration. And yet, that is exactly what they did. They had to, in order to try and understand how musculature worked, how the skeleton worked, what the ligaments did, so that when they were carving those beautiful marble statues that they were making, or when they were doing those wonderful paintings that they were working on, they could get them as accurately as possible. Their approach to their art was to understand. So technically, they were necromancers. They weren't trying to bring back the dead. They were trying to recreate the living by using the dead, which I think is quite an exciting approach if you look at it. So if your player is playing a necromancer who just wants to raise a family again, yes, maybe not so much experience points. On the other hand, guide them to looking at the spells from the perspective of, but what happens if you're not evil? What happens if you are using necromancy because you truly believe that that is the route to banishing death? If you can understand death, you can control it. If you can control it, you can prevent it. So a necromancer could very well be argued to be a harbinger of life, or a warrior for life. So that's something to think about. Definitely something to think about. Okay, we've got about 20 minutes before the end of the stream. I'm going to carry on. We were supposed to do a creative writing challenge, but that kind of fell by the way. Do you want me to carry on answering questions, or shall we go to the creative writing challenge? Let me get out of this so I can close that behind me. What would you prefer, creative writing or more questions? I'm going to answer some questions while you think about that. Ephros Eldor says, do you use lycanthropic vampiric rules in any of your campaigns, especially with these powers growing as the character progresses? Can you do a video on how you would integrate that? Well, it's an interesting one. From the perspective of lycanthropy rules, vampiric rules, and the like. Yes, there are rule systems that exist for that, which absolutely, yes, I will then use if they exist. Where they don't exist, where they start to grow in power and the like, again, something to look at, establish before your players get it. So if you're going to say, okay, well, lycanthropy is definitely something that is on the cards, this is how it works. You must say that to the players before they get bitten, before they get infected with lycanthropy or with vampirism. Why? Because once you are infected and you then start to give them the rules of how that's now going to play out, it could be a very different experience to the one that they are expecting. Lycanthropy, some of the rules said that the GM simply assumes control of your werewolf once you've turned full werewolf and it's a full moon. A lot of players won't like that. With vampirism, there's the you must drink the blood of the living. Some vampire rules are it has to be a sentient creature. Others are you can go and eat rats for days. Knock yourself out. So definitely something to think about. Okay, so some people have asked for writing. Some people have said questions, to be perfectly honest with you. Some people have said writing. What I'm going to say is, because we've only got 20 minutes left, and there's lots of people saying writing. There's lots of people saying writing. I like the writing challenge. Okay, so, questions, says Benjamin there. M. Drummond says challenge. Delta N9 says writing. Greyful says I'm after bed. Thanks for all you do. Thank you for watching. Writing and questions. Writing questions, says HLR4th. Harold, how you want me to do that? I think they're going to carry on with the questions next week. Next week we'll do more campaign. We'll do more creation stuff. So next week we'll get the creative juices flowing next week. So let's do questions now, and then we'll finish up the stream once we're out of questions. I think the questions are kind of rioting down. Yeah, we'll definitely do creative writing next week. Okay, so some of those questions that have come through. Benjamin Dare says, I've introduced a new character player to a 4-year-old campaign. They fight really big stuff, and here comes the noob with his 1d4 damage dagger. Ha! Any suggestions to making him useful or balanced? Okay. Well, it's an interesting question that automatically gets posed. Why did the character enter at a lower level than the rest of the players' characters? What was the decision behind that? If that's just, well, that's the rule, that's fine. How do you balance it? Quite honestly, I would have much more personal stuff involving that character. Politics, let them encounter other squires or other pages who work for these great knights, these really powerful things. Definitely let's let them explore those options. Why? Because those sometimes don't require rolls, that just requires role playing. So where your paladin has got plus 12 to their roll, here this new character does not have that, but they can talk their way through it. So that's something to look at. I would also not try and, here's just a whole bunch of magical items. Yes, give them that, but fundamentally they're going to be weaker anyway. So I would shift the focus for them away from that. Let them outthink the opponents rather than just beat them down. It's going to be tricky. It is going to be tricky. I would also advocate perhaps that the characters go on a flashback. And in the flashback, they go back to 20 years ago when their characters were all juniors. And now this particular character is as equal as the rest. And then this character can come forward. And I mean, you can really play with it. But I would look at that. Right, LSR Mithrandir says, I'm about to DM for the first time, and it's a homebrew campaign and setting. Great. How do I avoid unintentionally railroading the players while still preparing enough? Oh boy. Okay, well, look, railroading in a campaign world is tricky. If it's the first time that they're also playing in this world, their first few adventures are discovering. They're discovering what the world is like. They're exploring that world going, wow, let's look over there. No, let's look over there. Let's go over there. What's this village like? What's that place like? So I am doing the Campaign Creator series. We're on episode 14 or so now, I think, of that entire series, where we walk through how to create a campaign and then how to do your session 0 to let your campaign start to breathe. Avoid railroading by simply having a looser plot. Your master plot, if you are using a master plot, give it a lot of time to play out in. Don't make it in the next 24 hours they must defeat the Dark Lord or the world will end. Rather, in the next 7 to 8 months, possibly. I would go that way. So there we go. That's something that you can definitely look at. Kate Anchan says, I have an idea for a Cinderella NPC plot, the Duke of Doom. Thank you for the host. I have an idea for a Cinderella NPC plot that I would want to include as a tangential to the NPCs, but I'm not sure if I've made it interactive enough for them. Currently, there will be extra muscle for ball security. I wanted to have Cinders cursed and tied to the land until the head of the household frees them. Thoughts? You can tie them in a lot more than that. Yes, they can be security. But what happens if the prince comes to them and says, look, I know that you're supposed to be guarding my father's ball, but there is something that I desperately need your help with. I'm madly in love with this young woman whom I get really turned on because she's covered in household ash and soot and is ugly all the time in terms of her personal hygiene habits are not great. But I'm desperately in love with her and I want you to help me save her from my father. You can go just for the throat, just like that. So there we go. There we go. Something to consider. Right, next up is White Tiger 225 says, do you have any tips on running a hard sci-fi campaign, or more specifically an appropriate system? I've considered Fate, but I am otherwise unsure. I feel a more RPG focused system is better to avoid mechanical problems with the realistic aspects of hard sci-fi. By hard sci-fi, do you mean inertia, no sound outside in space, exposure to gamma radiation? Do you mean hard physics? In which case, then, the best one I can think of, and I dread to say it, is Starfinder. Starfinder's Starship Combat is designed to use inertia and all that kind of nonsense that goes on with that. Watch out, though, it becomes a tabletop simulator rather than role-playing. Otherwise, I'm still going to advocate modern role-playing, modern D20, and the future expansion book that came out for it. Lovely sci-fi rules, very simple, very easy to get hold of in terms of understanding the mechanics of it, and yeah, they didn't get in the way of the storytelling while still giving you science, space for your starships, without a doubt. Next question, Siriana says, a character was not given the way a player... A character was not going the way a player had hoped, and so the decision was made to change the character subtype to something that the player thought would help them progress their character better. How can working in their new skill sets work with the story? Is it fair to let them use those new skills immediately or have them build up to it? Well, I'm glad that they didn't just kill the character. That's a good thing. Let them evolve and that kind of thing. They want to change it up. What I would do is I would have a session where we go into the mind of the character, whether it's a dream or perhaps it's a backstory, something along those lines, and then jump back into reality to account for where their powers came from. Now, what this is doing is this is using game time rather than real time. So with game time, it happens in movies as well. The character has a dream sequence, they learn something, and then when they come back to it, because we've been on the real-time journey of the dream, it feels as if they've put in the time and the effort for the character to now have the skills that they suddenly miraculously start using. Again, I've just done videos on build your character towards the change rather than accept the change and just do the change. So I would encourage that player to talk about, well, my character starts to pick up a sword and see if that's the right way to go, or to do this or to do that. So yeah, definitely look at those two options. If they don't want to wait, have one adventure, just a one shot that takes us through that, and then go from there. Gedrian Firestorm, we will do creative writing next week. We're going to do creative writing next week. This is question heavy. Next week we'll do questions and more creative writing. I promise we will do that. I do promise that. The Giver of L says, a player wants to play a weak character in a dangerous world. How do you keep them alive while not downplaying the danger? It's a tough one. If the rest of the players have made hardcore characters who are going to survive in this dangerous world, I'm afraid the player is responsible for their own safety in this instance. Don't give them plot armor, because otherwise the rest of the players are going to go, well, why the hell did we bother creating our characters as seriously if this person did not? sure, throw them a bone every now and again, give them an option, but make sure that you do it for the entire party, not just for that one player. It is about fairness of adjudication. That's one of the fundamentals of being a good GM, is making sure that you treat everybody fairly. If it's tough for the one player, it shouldn't suddenly become easy for the other, simply because the other is playing a character who is supposedly incompetent. When you look at something like the film The Mummy from 1999 or 2000, somewhere around there, with Brendan Fraser, Raquel Weiss's character, the librarian, is ostensibly in an incredibly dangerous environment where she has no survival skills. She can't fire a gun. She can't defend herself. She is really the heroine in a damsel in distress, not the heroine, I should say. They managed to keep the action going, letting Brendan Fraser's character have all the fun in terms of combat, whilst she was being used effectively to drive the plot forward. There were times where she was near death, but there was just enough delay from the monsters to allow Brendan Fraser's character to arrive and to save the day. So something to think about for that. Right, next question. How are we doing? We've got 12 minutes left. Next question. Good night, Maker. Thank you for being part of the stream. Heinrich says, in your opinion, the most international system. As a German that only knows the Dark Eye, the Schwarze Auch, I think it is, the Dark Eye, I'm currently looking for a new system to explore. The most international system, I hate to say it, it's Dungeons and Dragons. I can walk into the center of Tokyo and buy a copy of Dungeons and Dragons in English, or translated into Japanese. I can go into South African bookstore, there's a bookstore, I know there are a couple more nowadays, where I can pick up Dungeons and Dragons. I can go to Brazil and pick up Dungeons and Dragons. We have fans who watch the show that play Dungeons and Dragons from all over planet Earth. As you say, as a German player, you've got the Dark Eye. Yes, we know of the Dark Eye, but it hasn't really moved much outside of Germany. There are hundreds of systems. I have Stalker from Finland. Again, wonderful system, but it's Finnish, and this was released in English, but it was a very small release because of marketing. So Dungeons and Dragons really is your first port of call. If it's not Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder is growing in popularity and will when they release Pathfinder 2. So don't buy the books now if you're going to get into Pathfinder. Wait for Pathfinder 2. I have mixed reviews on that system. But anyway, so yes, that would be my suggestion. I would welcome it if anybody else on the channel for Hindruk had an option. Other than the most international system, it has to be Dungeons and Dragons. It can't be World of Darkness. It can't be Fate. It can't be any one of the Star Wars incarnations. I'm just busy looking at my library of role-playing books. And I'm like, D&D is the one that everybody knows of or about. Sorry, there it is. Question. I want to, this is Honorable 596 again. I want to run a campaign vaguely based on the American Wild West. Yeehaw! But I keep running into the lack of plots to go through. The Western isn't exactly the most diverse genre after all. I think Mr. Eastwood is going to get hold of you and say, do you feel lucky, punk? I can't do an Eastwood accent at all. Do you have any advice for me, not only in role-playing and mechanics, but also, is D&D the right system to use? It's not built for guns after all. It isn't. There are a whole lot of Western-based systems out there. There's Westbound, there's Deadlands, there are a lot of Western-centric ones. At the same time, I don't want to say this, but D20 Modern has a very specific book, which is buried down there, called Ages Past or Historical D20 Modern. That has all the rules that you could possibly want for cowboys. It still uses a D20 system, so if you have D&D familiar players, it will definitely work for them. They'll be able to translate very, very easily. It doesn't use a lot of the Wild West game systems that are out there. Use playing cards rather than dice. That can be fun. I personally find it a little bit too meta. The dice are established enough not to be meta. And I understand the hypocrisy of that statement. But anyway, there we go. And once again, I have had a system failure from Restream Chat. I'm running it through the browser. They recommend that you download the app. I'm going to do that next time so we don't have this issue. So I'm going to tell Restream to very politely go away. It's a free service. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's not working for what I'm doing here. So now I've got now I have Twitch open and I've got YouTube open, and I'm kind of bouncing between the two. So that's how I'm going to do it. I've got Twitch over here. I've got YouTube over here. So that's how we are going to play this game. So I'm going to go, let's see, we've got more people watching Twitch on YouTube. So I'm going to go to YouTube first. Question from Jacob Sage. One of my players is working with an evil group that might oppose the party, and the reveal is coming up in the next few sessions. How can I get the most out of the betrayal? Jacob, the way to get that to really punch home is to let the players now start to question whether the group is going to betray them or not, and then almost immediately, so there's get to the point where like, these guys are going to betray us. They're lying. They are evil. Then get that very same evil group to prove that they are absolutely loyal to the party by doing something supposedly good. Meanwhile, it's actually secretly even more evil than possibly considerable, so that when they do then betray them, the party's like, I knew they were evil, but then they seemed to be good, but then they turned out to be evil, which I knew they were. So it allows the sense of vindication, of personal attack, as well as driving home the point that they have betrayed the party. So that's something to look at. Death Angel's Shadow asks on Twitch, one of my 4th level players has recovered a mithril breastplate in the course of the adventure. I would like to make it sentient, as I believe it would fit the circumstances of where she found it and fate of the previous owner, a victim of a red dragon. I would also like it to scale with the PC, granting additional abilities as the PC levels. This is something that has been introduced into the gaming culture over the last couple of years, yes. Without making the item too overpowered, what would be the best way to undertake this? Most of the sentient items I've found are offensive weapons. Yeah, so absolutely, yes, completely agree. One of the things that I have done in the past with sentient weapons is that, yeah, they can become difficult, and you want this thing to upgrade itself and to grow as well. As I said before, actually in this chat, turn it into an NPC. Give it stats, give it values, give it ambitions, give it desires, give it wants, give it hopes, give it fears, give it a personality, and treat it as an NPC. That way, the character can don the breastplate, and if the breastplate's like, you know what, you didn't polish me, you don't talk about my history to anyone else, you don't show me off, I am mithril, I demand to be recognized and shown off. You didn't wear me when you went in front of the king. As a matter of fact, you wore that piece of old raggedy velvet, if that's the kind of personality you wanted to have. Or it could be the, I'm not going to protect you today because you didn't charge yesterday. You let your companions go in front of you. Use it as a mouthpiece. Give them some cool bonuses and some cool stats, absolutely. But if you make them an NPC, then what happens is, if they start to become too overpowered, they can start to say, I'm very powerful, and you recognize this fact. You're going to do something for me now. I have some side quests, and the side quests lead the players to go and find more equipment for the other players, as well as to see whether the player is really interested in this. They're going to invest in that armor, look at how to make it likable. There's some things there on likability that you can do. So definitely look at that. Okay, 4 minutes. 4 minutes to the end of the stream. We always end on the hour. So I'm going to take 1 or 2 more questions and see where we end. Blaz Carloa says, what should I do if my players are neutral with possible protagonists and sometimes befriend them? Antagonists, I should say. They are neutral towards antagonists and sometimes they befriend them. Well, I would have a bunch of bounty hunters show up and start saying, we know that you hang out with the undead lich, and that makes you evil. we're coming to arrest you, we're coming to take you out. Or have the campaign shift towards the fact that the players' characters are evil and are starting to align themselves with the forces of evil. Have the Lich say, I was going to destroy you, but now I am actually going to work with you. You are powerful and I can use you in my forces. Switch the game around. If the players want to help the bad guys, the players are bad guys, and they should have the consequences thereof, thereto, and therein. Okay, right. White Tiger 225 says, I recently watched your video on plants. Plants, I love plants. And you spoke about a few plants that you created and spreadsheets you had. Yes, that was somebody else. That was a player who'd made this amazing spreadsheet. I was wondering if you ever considered releasing that publicly or if it is already a thing. I'm interested in an answer. So this also I really want to know. Well, the plants that I spoke about, those I made up for specific campaigns and used in those campaigns. And there isn't anything really much going on there. I didn't write them down, so there's nothing to release there. There was an amazing Excel spreadsheet that was released by a fan. They sent it through to me. I will need to go and check those emails and see if they were happy for me to release them publicly. If so, I will make them available on the GM website or on Discord. So thank you for that reminder. Tony Brucher says, I love the stream, gonna watch some Star Trek Discovery. Have a good night. Enjoy Star Trek Discovery. I thoroughly enjoyed the second season. Very different from the first season. So we'll see. Anyway, we have come to the end. White Tiger's got some questions. There's more questions on YouTube. So yes, look, that's the beauty of the stream. If I didn't answer your question today, come back next week Friday, same time, same place. I will then endeavor to answer your questions there as well. If not, find our Discord server. There are links all over the place. Come and chat to us there, because there are hundreds of incredibly talented people. There's thousands of talented people there on that Discord chatting daily, 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in. People are there. And then you can ask questions about frogs, says the Forsaken Frog. The Forsaken Frog is so sad. Kermit. You can ask your questions and they will get answered by people. So I thank you all. I thank you all for your donations today. That was fantastic. That really was great. So many people putting in money into the show. It's absolutely awesome. Yes, and I will see all of you, he said, not getting ready. I will see all of you again next week. We do have the Broken World Chronicles on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's where I've got a bunch of players desperately trying to put back a fractured universe in a D&D setting. They're having a lot of fun with that. We're in the Wild West, as a matter of fact, currently. So there is something to look forward to on that one. Otherwise, this morning we released, or this morning Tokyo time, Campaign Creator Review, where you've got to look back at what you've been doing for the last 3 months. Yeah. And so there we go. We are, I'm seeing here, we've got some auto hosts going on. I don't know how to raid. I don't know who to raid to. I don't know these things. These powers elude me. Anyway, yeah, so go and have a great evening, afternoon, morning. I can send you somewhere here. It's suggested. Let's send you to this channel here, because while I'm going to be on it in a couple of weeks, I should probably have a look there. So yes, until next time, I thank you all for watching, for your questions, and for your support. And until then, we will see you around. Happy gaming!